Welcome to Tales of History, where today we will be discussing a tragic breed which has been forgotten in time almost completely. Imagine working the exact same exhausting job each day, running inside a wheel for hours at a time whilst a roaring fire burns behind you. You have to run fast enough, as slowing down may result in punishment for burning the food. This was the unfortunate reality for one of history's oddest and forgotten dog breeds, the Turnspit Dog. For hundreds of years, these smaller working dogs powered kitchens across Britain. Their job was simple but brutal, running in a small wheel that turned roasting meat over an open fire. They weren't companions or lapdogs, but living kitchen machinery, which have been recorded since before the 16th century. For over 100 years, this breed has been extinct, as such a low-status dog was not continued once its sole purpose was replaced with modernized technology. Before these changes, you have to picture what cooking was like before electricity and modern ovens. Large homes, castles and inns, roasting meat was often cooked over open fireplaces. Whole chickens and joints of meat were skewered and rotated over a flame to cook evenly. This required constant rotation and attention, which could easily be delegated to servants to ensure even cooking. This takes hours and constant attention. A servant would most likely have a lapse in concentration and be more useful elsewhere. This led to a very creative but cruel solution. Instead of a human turning the spit, why couldn't a dog? Remember, this was during the times when dogs were often pitted against each other to fight, and bull and badger baiting was commonplace. The welfare of animals was not to the standard of today, which led to these unfortunate dogs to be placed inside a wooden wheel mounted on kitchen walls, like a huge hamster wheel. This was connected to the roasting spit with ropes and pulley systems to keep the spit turning over the fire. If they stopped, well, the food would stop cooking evenly. Over time, as this became more common, they were more or less bred for this specific role. Beauty and companionship were not considered, but only efficiency and endurance. Descriptions from the 16th to 18th centuries show that the Turnspit breed had very distinct features, being small yet sturdy with longer bodies and shorter crooked legs. Their unhealthy legs, which are seen as a deficiency in any other breed, were actually seen as a benefit to fit in the wheels. Their coats were often very rough and scruffy, aligned with Dachshunds and Terrier breeds which historians believe they originated from. Some sources also indicate that there may be some spaniel blood in them, but for all intents and purposes, this was a mongrel. Despite being purpose-built for the job, life was incredibly hard. Large kitchens may have fires burning throughout the day, especially for businesses or wealthier households. Expecting to run for hours at a time in the sweltering heat is no easy feat. Multiple dogs were often kept in wealthier households to avoid exhaustion, like a cruel relay. Some historical findings suggest cooks would harshly correct the dogs with hot coals or poking them if they began to slow. Learning that slowing down meant punishment, this cruel work continued for years. Due to this, they weren't really associated with being a pet as such, rather as equipment than the companions we know and love today. And yet, despite their harsh working lives, there are a few surprising stories that show people did occasionally feel sympathy for them. One of the strangest details about Turnspit dogs involves church on Sundays. Kitchens were often quieter on that day, so servants sometimes brought the dogs along when they attended services. But the dogs had such a strong association between certain words and their job that it could cause problems. There are accounts from the 18th century in a church service in Bath describing how Turnspit dogs would suddenly panic during sermons if the preacher used words like wheel or turning. The dogs had learned that these sounds meant it was time to work. When they heard them, they became anxious, thinking they were about to be sent back to the kitchen. Now, whether these were accurate stories or not remains to be seen, but the fact that people were aware of the cruelty these dogs went through speaks for itself. It's a strange but telling example of how deeply their work shaped their lives and trauma. Interestingly, not everyone treated Turnspit dogs as utility tools. One famous admirer of dogs in general, Queen Victoria, reportedly took a kinder interest in them. During her reign in the 19th century, as the breed was already beginning to disappear, she was known to help rehome retired Turnspit dogs so they could live out their later years more comfortably. Rather than spending their entire lives running in kitchen wheels, some of these dogs were given homes where they could simply exist as companions. It was a small gesture, but an important one at a time when working animals were rarely given much consideration once their utility ended. By the early 1800s, however, the world was beginning to change in ways that would make the Turnspit dog unnecessary, with mechanical devices which would rotate roasting spits automatically. Clockwork mechanisms, steam power, and weighted pulleys saved this breed in some ways, but began their ultimate fade into obscurity. These machines were more consistent and required no feeding, training, or care. Once they became widely available, kitchens quickly adopted them, putting Turnspit dogs out of work. Because the breed had been created almost entirely for this one specific job, it didn't transition well into other roles. They weren't widely kept as pets, and they didn't have another obvious purpose once mechanical spit turners took over. As a result, people simply stopped breeding them. Within a few decades, the breed faded away completely. There isn't a clear record of the exact moment the last Turnspit dog died, but by the middle of the 19th century, they had effectively vanished. Today, the breed survives only in historical descriptions, artwork, and one preserved specimen. A taxidermy example of a Turnspit dog can still be seen at a museum in Wales. Looking at it today, you can see the long body, the short legs, and the frame that once powered countless kitchens across Britain. It's a strange reminder of a time when animals were routinely used as living machines, and a time where we held completely different moral standards to today. The story of the Turnspit dog is both fascinating and sad. For centuries, these dogs quietly helped cook meals tirelessly, but barely noticed and rarely remembered. Today, the Turnspit dog stands as one of the clearest examples of how humans have shaped dog breeds around specific needs. Sometimes those needs create beloved companions or loyal guardians. For better or for worse, when the wheels stopped turning, the Turnspit dog simply faded into history. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe and suggest any ideas for future videos on your favorite dogs. See you soon!